All right, we are rolling. Welcome to the virtual brown bag. Let's get this thing rolling because there's always lots of goodies that we share here. As usual, we are recording these meetings, so make sure that you don't share anything that could cause you any trouble with your employers, your clients, as well as having us have to edit that afterwards, which is always painful. So we don't want to do that. Please don't make us do that. Um, what is the VBB, the virtual brown bag? This is where we share tips and tricks, experiences, the things that we've learned the hard way. Maybe let's help somebody else not go through such hard times when they're going through the same or similar type of things. Frustrations or difficulties, maybe something that you're trying to get done or you were able to get done, but you're not happy with the outcome. Run it by other folks here. Maybe they have a good or a better solution for the problem, or at least give you some pointers as to things that you could try out. So don't be shy. Just open up your mic and start talking with us. Logistics, we do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time here on Skype, and everybody is more than welcome to join in. This is a partial list of topics we've covered, so we really go all over the place. We're mostly software developers, but we do end up, playing other roles in the projects and engagements that we have. So we've really been all over the map. So, if you have anything that you feel passionate about or you feel like strongly about, just bring it up here. We have a virtualbrownbag.com website where you can always find the link to this meeting here, as well as the link to the previous meetings, the videos, and a little blurb so that you know what we talked about in those meetings, and then you can watch and catch up with some of the older discussions. And other than that, let's roll. So, hey, George, I finally got my invite for the, what is it called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. I'm like, what was the name of the thing again? So yeah, I applied for it like 2 weeks ago, and 2 days ago I got the invite with the link. I didn't join it yet. Didn't have time to do it. So
Yeah.
do you have any like pointers, anything for like, as I join in, anything in specific you feel like I should know?
I could probably share. Let's see. I could probably share. So I kind of explained how it works, right? Where it installs itself as a virtual camera, which is like just
Right.
interesting, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's see if can I actually share the screen itself. I don't
Okay.
think not easily. Hold on. I can do it if I can. Here, I bet. Let me rearrange some stuff. So yeah.
And I'm assuming, I mean, I see that it's working as a virtual camera for Skype. I'm assuming, of course, that it works for Zoom. Have you run into any other of these platforms that it didn't work?
It actually does. Yeah, it works for Skype now since the update. You have to update to latest. It worked with Google out of the box. With Zoom, I also had to update to latest. Like there was something about them screwing up their cameras maybe or something.
Okay.
Let's see. How the hell do I drag and drop this? Um, see that. Do I? Oh, I guess I can just do this. So, so this is kind of what it looks like right here. So right there, it's showing me like it's a little weird. Like this right here is what controls like if I want to screen share, I go to add screen share, and then I get all the different things that I can share. Windows, that's a standard thing, and then this comes up like this, and I can flip back and forth between these because like they're all treated as slides. It's made for presentations and not really for live sharing. So like you could see that like it's you've seen it before. Like it's more fuzzy than with sharing text or anything moving than kind of what you'd expect. But then like
Right.
these are so first of all you can grab yourself, make yourself larger, smaller, move yourself around. So like that stuff's super easy. Um,
Right.
these buttons at the top are a little interesting. So there's that kind of view, nothing that kind of view, or that away, which is just going to turn me off entirely. Um,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
then it has some of these things, so like you can change transparency of yourself, which is kind of nice. Coloring, I mean, that's just silly, but it's right. Um, like yeah, like stuff like this, it's just larger and smaller, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly really intuitive. Um, you know, this allows you to like have the different backgrounds for yourself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like you can switch between those really
So
easily.
that's what room means. It's just the background. It's not like in Zoom where you can have
No.
multiple.
It's really just the background.
Gotcha.
Um, and then like it's just kind of a deal because like you can still see it, right? Even when I'm full screen, you can still kind of see the background. So like so you just kind of got to think about it whether it's moving and that's distracting or not. Mics, camera. Oh, this is kind of interesting. So it also installs itself as a virtual microphone, so you can route everything through here, and that way if you're playing a video, I believe that will get rendered directly as if it was coming from your mic.
Okay.
Kind of nice. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty straightforward and simple. Like it really wasn't too long to figure out. Like this little thing where the editing media and screen share was like the part that was like the least intuitive. It also has this kind of neat feature where you can have two people on the screen at the same time. So next time after you get it set up, we might want to try that. That could be kind of
okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't tried recording or anything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you had tried that, because that's another thing that I'm interested in experimenting. Like, as I've been using OBS for that. Last week I needed to record something. I'm like, okay, I have everything set up. I have all like the scenes that I want to cut through the presentation, but I don't want to like stream it to YouTube and then use that video because that's low quality. And then of course, well, I can just record it. Like OBS has a recording button.
Right.
So I was wondering how well it works there.
Yeah, that's that button. I don't really know how well it works. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, pretty useful. I've been using it pretty much nonstop. The one thing that's kind of a bummer with it is because it's kind of its own app and has that view of yourself in it. So your camera is the light for your camera is like on all the time.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Like it gets easy to get used to it and then forget that you're like sitting in a video call or something like that. Because even when you're not in a video call, unless you close the app, the light is on.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
what's up, Joseph?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining us. We are talking about which is an app similar to like OBS to do like if you see George, he was just walking over the setup to make that happen. All the fun that we can make with it.
I haven't heard of either of these apps.
Yeah, it's pretty nifty. There it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I like the one video that they have on their website where they're showing like for a feature that I think it's in beta where you can use like a remote control from like a video game to actually route some of the things that you do.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, to make like your camera, like you on the picture, to go bigger or smaller or turn things around. You use the controllers for that, so it makes it a lot quicker to make these transitions.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty nifty.
All right. So that's we'll be trying it out more in the future, I think, because Claudia and I both do presentations and talk online a lot. Right. But yeah, I've been doing it like it's for our boot camp classes. Just I feel so much better doing lectures that way. And,
okay.
And I still haven't figured out how to like get like really good engagement over Zoom with people, but at the very least this makes me feel better because like my slides are like usually the standard advice on slides, like the slides are like one word or like something like that, right? It's mostly about my presentation, and I feel so dumb doing that over Zoom where you can't see me. Like it's just like, well, yeah, there's no point to this almost.
Right.
Yeah, but it's been a lot better.
Right. And one thing that annoys me in Skype is that I don't see a way, for example, if you start sharing your screen, then that thing is going to go full screen on my Skype. But if we are sharing it like you are right now with the virtual camera, I cannot like pin your incoming video to be the thing that's like full screen. Whereas like in Zoom, in Microsoft Teams, that's something that you can do. So this is a little bit annoying, at least in the Skype setup. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the option to like fit and crop video, but that's not good at all. And see full video feed. It's only like if we have multiple people on the call, I don't get to see like your video full screen.
Yep.
And by the way, right now it's PC only, right?
No, I'm on a Mac. I think it's Mac.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. What or is it Mac only? I thought it was like for one OS only.
It might be Mac only. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I have to keep that in mind because my Mac is a little no, it's a lot less powerful of a machine here. So I'll need to experiment that. Hopefully for next week, I'll set it up, and then next week I will join from my Mac and see how that works.
Yeah.
On my older machine.
Cool. So, all right, let's talk about tech. Honestly, I was hoping we'd get like some more people joining. That I've been advertising it more, and like a lot of people like showing interest. Keep up, but yeah, like you said during the intro, we don't want it to just be about stuff that Claudio and I talk about the entire time. Like, I would be happy if more people learning coding like join and start asking questions that they feel like they're not getting answers to oftentimes.
Right.
Joseph, I haven't seen you here around here much before. Is this your first one?
I think this is my first one. I had to. I haven't used Skype in years, so that's how I realized it was my first.
And you know that you can just join online, right? You don't need to install Skype actually for this.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't actually need to install it because Microsoft did that for me when I installed Windows. So.
Oh, good Lord.
But I did have to create a Skype account.
Yeah, you don't need to.
For the life of me, remember.
Yeah, I mean, for this offering that we are using for Skype, you don't need to install Skype and you don't need an account. You just click on the link, and if you don't have anything, it will just load it in the browser and you can join in, just for future reference.
Good to know. Yeah, actually, that's another good thing about. Oh, hold on. Someone else. Oh, hey, oh wait, Robert. We got another person.
Yay.
Hi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. How's everyone today? I do apologize for being late.
Oh, you're good, man.
Yeah, I've got another friend that wants to join. What I was going to say, that's another good thing about because it's installing itself as a virtual camera. What's happening is like you can share your screen even when you're on the web app. So normally, like with a lot of them, like the web Skype, I don't think you can share your screen.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Good point. Okay, good. Yeah, so one thing I'll bring up, I mean, not trying to throw Joseph under the bus, but just since I know that he's a React expert. So a couple of weeks ago, we've been talking about like React this, React that, and some like around best practices and things like that. And Joseph is one of my go-to guys in React. So whenever I have a question as to, okay, is this the best way to do this? Are there better ways to implement this? This is the guy. So if anybody on the call has like specific React things that you would like to ask, this is a good, actually not a great person to ask about that. And Joseph, Bus, there you go.
See, that's the side effect of not hating JavaScript, is kind of just become the de facto front end guy wherever you are.
I know, right?
That's how new DBAs are created. They're the ones that are physically closest to the server or the SQL server when the last guy left.
That's right.
Hey,
You know what?
Brian, we got one more person joining.
Oh,
Awesome.
Cool.
Cool.
Sysadmin is just the guy who doesn't mind Perl and Bash.
That's right.
All right. Well, I do have some React stuff that I could talk about, like about a nice pattern that I figured out earlier today. Not earlier.
Yeah.
Earlier this week. Or we could talk about a couple other things. But I mean, again, I don't want to just lunch in the first one. So, does anyone else have stuff that they want to bring up outside of the usual suspects? All right.
Right.
All right, I'll hit up my list. Okay, because I have a couple shorter things I want to talk about. Let me bring this up. Okay, this is a cool thing that I just found out about. Who knows about the EICAR antivirus test file?
I have never heard of that.
Okay, it is a file containing this string. Okay, right there. That string is most antivirus software. It will detect that as a virus. Okay. Standard thing, the same way that credit cards have all credit cards have a credit card number that you're supposed to use for testing. Here's the interesting thing is that means that you can really fuck with anyone who's running antivirus by sending them that file, because antivirus will flag it, will remove it. But
it'll spook them.
What was that?
But it'll spook them.
Yeah. Well, so I started following some tweet threads about it, because when it first came out, this guy just said you want to see if a service is storing your password in plain text, use this as your password. And he's like, I'm currently on support, on hold with support, because can't access any of my files and stuff. Because that's what happens, right? That gets written into a database, that gets written into a file. Antivirus flags that, quarantines the entire database file. Right? And then it started going into it, and there's some really interesting stuff that you get into. So here's an interesting thing that I saw right away. A guy took that and put a QR code for it on the mask. So what's going to happen when any facial recognition scans that? Facial recognition scans that, writes it to a file, because then it needs to process it, and then antivirus is going to delete that file right away, causing any facial recognition to not have your face on it anymore. And then I started this got patched recently, and apparently it was in the wild for a long time. So what are these guys that? Let me pull up my Pocket, because I saved it recently. Oh my goodness. That is Rack 901 Labs. So this was a super interesting thing. Exploiting almost every antivirus software. So basically, here's the concept, the thing that they said. All antivirus software is basically moving files around, doing that file manipulation stuff. Oh, I see a dangerous file, I'm going to quarantine and move it, basically delete it. And it always is running with a high admin privilege, because it needs to be able to delete all files. Also, in the time period between when a file is detected as a virus and the time when it actually deletes it, there is some sort of lag in that time period. So, and also operating systems have symlinks. So if you are on a system, you could escalate your permissions, or delete any file in the system that you want, by creating this file and then timing it, and they're like, it's not that hard to time, so that the antivirus detects the file, and then before it actually deletes it, you change that file to a symlink that points to any file you want to delete on the operating system, including the antivirus itself. So you can, or anything else, like you, and they were like, yeah, you could really screw with stuff. So they have a whole proof of concept and write up and like a bunch of stuff, and it apparently got patched like a couple months ago in a lot of ways. But patched probably means that I don't know. The patch probably means that it treats this file a little differently, but like that is still probably a thing you could do with any sort of with any actual virus file, right? It's and then like I was looking through like people talking about it, and they're like, yeah, red teams have been using this for years to get privilege escalation. This is like a thing that's existed. This is how rinky-dink everything that we use is. It's like this level of bullshit is totally possible. It doesn't even like you have to be able to write like a really simple Python script to like watch for file opens basically, and that's it. Wow. So yeah, it's yeah, serious.
That is pretty cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, so that's the EICAR test file. I wanted to talk about that, and I might be getting one of those masks. Yeah. Then let's see what else. What else was cool? This guy. Oh yeah, Shittoberfest is happening. So if people don't know, Hacktoberfest is during the month of October. A bunch of companies promote contributing to open source, which is all cool and stuff like that. What that means is a lot of companies are offering oftentimes cash prizes for people that can do the most work. What that's started to mean in the last few years is that there's a ton of PR spam happening for open source repos as people send like complete nonsense PRs like that.
Oh man, that's a thing now, really?
Yep. Yep. If you are able to see any error in this process, please see a complaint to our official site, right? Thank you. Yeah. So there's this account that's been posting these, but yeah, it sucks. It's a thing. Right there. Okay, like this, like something like this, I would actually say is probably, that kind of gets to my point. I don't know if something like this is actually spam. Like, it might not be a super good PR, but like we tell people all the time when they're learning. First of all, we tell people, contribute to open source as a way of gaining experience so you can get a job, which is good, except when we don't, like, you can't do that without actually teaching the open source ethos, or else this is what you get. People are like, yeah, like I'm just doing this to get a job, not because I care about open source reform. That's depressing.
Wow.
And we need to be better about that. Like that's just something everyone that's like participates in like working with juniors and helping them needs to do better on. But also stuff like this. Actually, I had a good example of one. Let's see. I don't know if this is. I don't. It's just an image. But like stuff like this might be like a legitimate thing, right? This might be someone who from like another culture, because we also tell people, when you contribute to open source, don't worry, like document any documentation stuff that you feel like is helpful. Go ahead and add that because it's still being helpful. And I mean, maybe this person was being helpful. Maybe they were actually confused by this, because maybe in the Android store it appears without a space, and they looked at it and said, "This is a space, so I'm gonna, I've been told contribute whatever, and I'm gonna contribute this." And now we're shaming them on this public Twitter, which sucks. Of course, it would have been better if they fix the misspelling the word license, but so be it. Like, and it is interesting. It generates this situation where it's like freaking hard to tell whether someone's being a legitimate beginner or spamming.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing that's going on right now in dev. Oh.
Yeah, that's a shame. It does make me think of, like folks that just drop a bunch of buzzwords in resumes just that they, get matched in, job searching, engines and things like that. And then, of course, they show up for an interview. You ask about things around those buzzwords and they cannot really articulate. So this would be similar. It's like, oh, yeah, I can see through data that you've been participating, contributing to open source projects, but like, what is the quality of that contribution exactly, right? It doesn't give you the insight into that data. Well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the hacks that I've seen is to put all those keywords in just a hidden section in your Word document. So that way the sorting algorithm picks it up, but the interviewer doesn't see it, so they don't start asking you questions on things that you don't actually know.
Yeah, but is that thing that works?
It's
if your filtering process and your interviewing process is that shitty, then you deserve it. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you need to have because that would be the equivalent of saying you need to have CQRS on your resume, but we're not going to ask you any questions about it. No, then you definitely deserve to get played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea is I don't actually know it. Just that's a way that some people try to game those sorting algorithms.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, also.
I guess the thinking is that a lot of these job postings are often written by recruiters who aren't necessarily experts on the subject anyway, so they'll just add a bunch of unicorn skills, or I guess that's at least the thought process behind people who would try to do that. Mm-hmm. So they just start adding, they think maybe, hey, maybe I'm qualified for this, what I'm not really going to need the more ancillary skills based on the job description anyway. So, but they'll just throw it in there. Just hide, just put it in a hidden div essentially.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, like I on my resume, I just have a buzzword section. So like I definitely do that. I'm not against it, but I like what I tell my students, because they do ask like, well, what should I put on the resume or not? And I'm like, everything you put in your buzzword section, like you should be able to at least talk about the basic level questions on, right? You're not. They're boot camp grads. Like no one thinks they're an expert when they're talking to them, hopefully. But then like I don't want you to be asked to be. I don't want to look at your resume, see a thing, ask you about it, like what I consider the 101 questions on it, and just have you stare blank at me, or be like, well, I never actually did that part of it on my project. Like that, no, that shouldn't happen. And then the thing that I have happen all the time is like I'll see NoSQL on people's resume. I go, okay, tell me 2 NoSQL databases, and then go Mongo, and then it's silence. I'm like, well, then put freaking Mongo on. You don't know shit about NoSQL.
Mongo or NoSQL almost means nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's not being.
It's literally.
NoSQL is a buzzword that people do, but like I'm not being a dick. But if I'm an interviewer, I see that on a resume, that shit's the first question I'm asking. Like, how many NoSQL databases do you have experience with? sounds interesting that you do that. If you can only say Mongo, then it's not going to make you look good, right?
Well, and you might hear back something like, well, Oracle and Postgre, that's NoSQL, right?
Ooh. Postgres, SQL, you can totally use Postgres and SQL Server as a NoSQL database. They
Well,
both
yeah,
have
but what I'm
JSON
saying is,
databases.
if a person only knows SQL Server and you say, tell me a NoSQL database, right?
Yeah, saying just that. Yeah. Fortunately, that doesn't happen so often, but it's still, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a chance.
Yeah. And like, that's a hard thing for like beginners too, when I see them listed, because I get it. They need to like trigger keyword searches and stuff like that. But it's like, at the same time, like what someone's saying that is a skill now becomes dependent on their overall skill level, because if someone's skill like more senior, then I see NoSQL on a resume, I assume, okay, well, like you understand how to model stuff in a NoSQL database, like when to use which type of database, at least have some mature thoughts on it. And then if you see a junior person say that, they just mean they've used it before, which is not super duper helpful, but still needed for buzzword triggers. And then,
Right.
yeah, and you don't know sometimes whether they're senior or junior until after you've interviewed them.
Right.
Do you think that a senior engineer should have a resume with like everything that he's ever experienced? Technologies dating back to 2002. Like, yeah, I used Macromedia, Cold Fusion, Director, whatever. Like, should that be on my resume today, or should I just do the things that I've used this year, or things that I want to talk about? And assumptions can be made based on 20 years experience. These are the things he's listed as skills. What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard that advice too. That was actually how. So I occasionally do phone interviews for improving, and that's how I learned that Fox Pro was a thing.
And you see, it really depends on how people use that kind of information, right? Because like for me, I will put, depending, like if I'm working on my profile and where that profile is going to be sent to, I may include my Foxborough experience, not in the sense that, oh yeah, I have Foxborough experience, I'm totally willing to work on a new Foxborough project. No, it's more like to give people context to say, I've done a lot of help, getting people from Foxborough into .NET, like recreating their app. So I have that experience. And how is that helpful? Well, if the current customer has Foxborough developers on the team, it does help building trust, knowing that, hey, these new consultant guys that are coming in, they actually know where we are coming from. So it's going to be easy. It's going to be more relatable in that sense. Now, just throw in there like, oh yeah, I have some COBOL experience. I haven't worked with it for 20 years, and I'm really not looking forward to work on any new COBOL project. Well, so why putting that in your resume? That's like my personal take on it.
So I've actually seen, like, I've seen it come up from the staffing side, because working along the staffing team at Surge, like we were a consulting shop. We would sometimes have a client coming to us and say like, I need someone that has experience with technology XYZ, right? Like COBOL or something.
Mm-hmm.
And what the client's actually saying is like, I have some problems with this technology. None of my engineers know what's going on with that, and they're telling me that I need to get someone with experience on it. Therefore, I'm asking this consulting company for someone in that. So in that respect, yeah, like they go out and they do the buzzword search for someone who has COBOL or whatever on their resume, and
Mm-hmm.
So what if it was 20 years ago? If the person can talk about it, then they still might be a good fit for the client, who might be perfectly happy with them, and the position might be perfectly happy. So like, I would almost say, list anything that you wouldn't mind working in again,
Right.
and that you wouldn't mind popping in searches that people are looking for when people are looking for that. And yeah, like if you just think on the level of the staffing company, then I mean, like it's kind of weird because I know like people that would totally see that as a negative if you have like 50 different words or 100 different things listed. But it's like, well, yeah, but you kind of need it. You're not going to get those projects at all if you don't list them. And if you have that experience and you don't list it, you're not capitalizing on what you totally have. All right. So I would actually almost say like list it unless you're like really like, no, I don't want to even talk about this stuff.
Yeah, unless you don't want people knowing that you know.
Dirty little secret.
Yeah, that's what I did with PHP. I kind of lean towards the same thing. I think as long as if like you can list everything that you've ever used, I think it's just important to also include your project history in your resume as well, so that way that the interviewer knows to like if they just want your recent skills, just look through like the last 5 years of work you've been doing, cross match that with your skill list, and
Sure.
Yeah,
that's what I always do with every candidate. Like I never, it's nice to see the more niche skills, but for the most part, focus on last 5 years of work they've been doing.
But I will say, like, I also tell people like don't be redundant in your resume and put the tech you're working with under your projects, because that is redundant. You have that all the way up there. It just takes up space and sits there, and most of the time people don't care. So
I care. That's how I narrow it down.
Yeah, and it's not like it's hard to be able to tell, but again, like then I would say you don't really need it in both places because the algorithm will pick it up either way. But also, like putting that that makes the project descriptions like really inconsistent. If you think about like the type of stuff that people often tell you they want to see, like numbers, I improved user retention, by this amount, I did this, blah, 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 blah. I did all these stuff. And then to throw in there a bullet point just about the tech you worked with, it seems like so small potatoes, like compared to like, the bigger picture, which is what every other bullet point about that is. Yeah. Basically, no one has good advice about resumes. Yeah. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten all my jobs without one. I don't know.
What was that?
I think that I've gotten all my jobs without ever having a resume. So, like.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had definitely didn't have a resume for my current one. Maybe my past one. But
I think the trick is just getting your resume into the hands of a human being rather than just, going through whatever you call them. I can't think of what you call them.
Recruiters, staffers.
No, you want to get it into the hands of, the client that's going to hire you, right?
Yeah.
If you can get it into their hands and you're going through another recruiter, then they can kind of pull you through the process, right? But trying to get through what do you call the resume databases that all these recruiters use?
LinkedIn? I don't know. Mine just uses LinkedIn.
It's not LinkedIn. You submit your resume, they run it through, they do like an algorithm, like keyword search on it.
Yeah, you can do a LinkedIn Pro and Stack Overflow Careers. That's what our recruiters always used. I didn't know there was another nautical one.
Well,
yeah, back when I was back in college, when I was applying to a lot more corporate positions, they would often have you like log into their website and submit, through their forms, and presumably they had their own, search algorithms.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to that point, though, of always trying to get your resume to the hands of a human being, I'd say that's more of a reason to participate in user groups like this, meetup groups and things like that. Get out there in the community and be somebody, right?
Yep. Amen to that, brother. Totally agree.
I mean, yes, but also like, especially at the earlier stage of people's career, like under 5 years, like they have to cast a much wider net because there's a much lower percentage of people can use a developer with under 5 years of experience, definitely under 3 years of experience. So you have to send it to hundreds of companies, and you have to like be in there. You have to be in the running there, and like there's different strategies you can do. But I mean, like participating in online communities is important, but like also like, I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do there as well. So I don't know. And another thing, just I've noticed like a lot of online communities in the last few months specifically have been a lot more quiet than normal. So that becomes tougher as well. Yeah. I feel like it's tough. It's tough advice to give that to like more junior people because like they would be severely limiting themselves in that way. Like, yeah, a lot of people, even junior that I know, did get their job through networking and through getting it into the right hands at the right time. But at most 50%, a lot of them did get it and did get it because they just kept applying. They applied to hundreds of places, and eventually that number came up. Oh.
It's interesting that and I appreciate, George, that you always bring up like how hard it is for these folks that are just young getting into it, because it's an experience that I haven't had here, right? Since I didn't go to college here, I didn't grow up here, so I didn't have this experience. So I have no idea like how hard that is because I haven't gone through it. Like my challenges back in Brazil when I started getting into this were very different from how it is here. So whenever people ask me for like guidance around that, I said that is not an experience that I have, and it's limiting in a way. It's like I need. So I always appreciate when you bring it up because it's something I need to be more aware of.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I've seen pictures of Brazilian corporate you. You seems like a pretty similar junior dev experience.
It was different, my friend. I can tell you that much. Just making the decision back then that I would not go to college, it was a huge thing. People were like, pitchforks towards me. It's like, you're gonna be a nobody. How can you be anybody if you don't go to college, if you don't get a formal degree and all blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm already working, doing this software development thing. What can I learn possibly at college when I have college friends calling me to ask how to design databases, how to design implementations of things? I don't have the money to put into college because like public college in Brazil is horrid. When I hear people complaining about public education in the US, I laugh because it's like, oh man, you have no idea, right? Like in Brazil, it's really, really bad. And I could never afford, or my family could not afford sending me to private college. So for me, it was like, just go out there and work, buddy. Go ask people, go, get a little bit of your money, hard-earned money, buy some books, read it, ask people who are doing it, and learn right there. So I have way more street smart than just your typical academia things. So it was very different. And then again, here it's very hard to relate because most of the people I've interacted with, they've gone to college, so they come from a very different background, and to me it's hard to find that relationship.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Although, I mean, like, again, with boot camps, you're starting to see a lot more people. Although I think still most of them have gone to college, at least even if they haven't finished. but just not for computer science a lot of times. So
Got
you
it.
are starting to see that, fortunately, which is good. Yeah, you said that. In Brazil, it's the public education system worse. Like, yeah, I mean, my parents in the Soviet Union, they learned how to take apart and assemble Kalashnikovs. like, like that was part of their public schooling.
Yeah.
My mom, like, yeah, I know how to strip a rifle.
Yep.
So yeah, not doing that in school. Not prepping for the Great War with the West.
Right.
All right, do we want to talk about React Contacts, or we want to just keep talking about interviews?
Let's see. I have one thing that's I can throw out there that's came up recently in some discussions I've had. Let me drop it as a question. How soon do you feel that databases should come into an implementation of whatever, right? So like, like from my background, I used to start from the database up, right? That's where I come from, like from the old DBase days. You start with the database in mind, and then you work your way around. I've since flipped that around, and the database is the last thing that I think. It's not that it's not important. I just move when I make that decision about database specific, like the actual permanent persistence of things. How do you guys feel about it? Where do you draw that line?
Pretty similar, I'd say. We were always taught, I studied computer science in college, so, we were taught all about, database design and everything. But I just think it comes more naturally to me, at least, to write the application logic first and, worry about actually persisting the relevant data, once it's actually time to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when I started doing development, the apps that I built from the ground up, we already started with the database and then built forward. But nowadays it's more kind of start with the domain model and then build out, to whatever database you need or backend data store.
Huh.
So,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I tend to write much more sane data models when I do it that way. Because when you start with the database up approach, it's kind of shaping how you write everything else. But if you start from app logic down, then you're really just at the database level, you're really just worrying about persisting that data, which, you might not, at least when it comes to, like, if you're just writing a microservice, that's probably all that you care about keeping a database for is data persistence. You don't need any data science nonsense. So
The other thing is also going to depend on where you come into certain projects, right? If you kind of jump onto a project and it's already in flight, the patterns that people are using to develop that particular application have already been set. And most people, I think, usually end up starting with databases first. So you got to just jump in and try and be effective where you can.
I think we should also be clear, because I think we're all mostly in agreement that database first is a mistake. And actually, that's one thing, like, I recently found, like, one of our slides in our program was like talking about how, your database schema is the foundation of your application. Like, no, we need to stop teaching this right away. This is one of the big things that I've spent years making people unlearn. But I think it's important to kind of acknowledge why, and it's because, it's not that there's anything wrong with designing the database, but the structure of the data has to serve the application. And if you design the database first and do it in a way. It's not that it's really a problem to design the database first. It's a problem to design it in a way that is difficult to change continuously, right? Because if you're and not having processes around that too, right? And if you do that, then that old column that doesn't quite fit what you're putting in there now, but like you can't really rename it because it'd be a big thing, that sticks around. You know, that piece of data that's split between two tables that really should be combined into a single JSON field, that sticks around, right? And all of that stuff just ends up sticking around and ossifying and making the rest of your application so much more difficult to change and evolve. And that's really the big problem, not the fact that it's database or domain and stuff like that. So I think that there's a little bit of a conflagration between different things that happens, because one of the things that makes changing things easier is ORMs. And most ORMs work like you design your model, which means you're thinking about objects, and then you just, at least until you launch, you spit out the database, sync it to the database, auto migrate it, whatever. You don't have to worry about it at all. So I think that's one of the big reasons why we choose that. But then the interesting thing that happens there is, so that does end up limiting us anyway, because most, like how many ORMs could you realistically transition from SQL Server to a Redis database, right? It's not freaking easy. That's like fundamental changes. So you still have, you really do have to make some commitments early on, which is a bother. Like, you know, I spent all the day before yesterday writing SQLized models that they'll spit out a Postgres database. And like, I was wondering like whether I should be putting all this in DynamoDB, and I decided against it because of how the relationships will be queried. But that is a decision I had to make at that point in time. And like, if I want to change, if later on I decide to split things up so that maybe DynamoDB does make sense, it'll be a big pain in the ass to change. So we're not quite there where, like, we're doing stuff so that it's easier to change, and we're still not quite at the point where it is easy. Which is maybe an argument to break things up as much as possible.
Yeah, I think, keeping app logic and data logic separate can help go a long way. Because like if you're going from SQL to Redis or anything other than SQL, like there's probably no avoiding rewriting the data layer, but you can at least avoid rewriting the app logic layer. And like my client has, their main code base has various issues that we could go into, but that for a long time they were using a document database called RavenDB, and
it's great.
But one of the problems that they didn't have was keeping that Raven logic mixed with app logic. They had it pretty well separated, so they were able to. They were running into various performance issues around it, and so they recently migrated to Mongo for it, and it seemed like it was actually pretty relative. As far as rewriting a whole data layer goes, was relatively painless because the rest of the app logic was well separated from it. So it was just that one data project essentially that they had to port over to Mongo.
I don't know if it's always possible to separate data logic from app logic though, because like, consider something like, all right, let's say let's say users and permissions, right? So users have permissions or users have roles, right? So initially you think, all right, you know what? I'm just going to make users and roles are just going to be a part of the user's document, right? I throw that into, and really I'm always getting a user by ID or by email or in password or something like that. So whatever, throw it in Mongo, throw it into React, throw it into whatever. And then later on, you realize that, well, no, there actually needs to be another screen where you can administer roles directly, which means you need to be able to have a denormalized list of all the roles and be able to change them all at the same time, right? Which means that the whole conceptual structure you came out with doesn't work, because in any of those databases, you can't query easily into the children in a way that's performant, right? Certainly not once you get to the point where you have hundreds of thousands of users and user documents. So like there's almost no separating it for like when you talk about entity structure sort of thing, right? Which is why I generally say use a SQL database by default. But, yeah. Unless you have like a pretty darn good idea about why something else is better. But I mean, still, like that's a very real situation.
Well, and it is one of those, if you're following, domain-driven design and CQRS and all those things, you're thinking about those bounded contexts as isolated things. So it helps with, instead of making this huge decision about what database are we using and what ORMs and stuff, well, we're making smaller decisions, right?
Bounded what database for this context or this component annuity terms or this.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in some contexts, it may make sense to have a relational database. In others, a document database will be a better fit, and so on.
I've been having to think a lot about that lately, and like the thing that I'm, the business logic in the workflow and how things happen in the application in real time seems great. It seems like a great solution for that. It seems easy, but like when it comes down to like the reporting pages where they want to see a whole bunch of information that's all related together in all these different ways, I'm just like, well, we haven't done that yet, but how are we going to do that? Especially with all these microservices, you can go ask for all these bits and pieces of information.
Sure. Let's see, and that's we are just at time. I think let's punt that. Can we bring up this point, Brian, that you just made next week, and we can dive more into it, because I think that's like it deserves like a longer discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Is that cool?
Yeah, I agree. That's actually something that I've always wondered too, like how you just map out all the real world data.
Yes.
Decomposition.
Decomposition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks, Brian, for bringing that up.
It isn't taught very often. That's the one thing that that Javal always says. As I'm like, yes, 100%.
Okay. So yeah, thanks, Brian, for bringing that up. So let's. I'm taking note here. Next week, let's start the conversation from where we're, leaving it off here, because I think this is great stuff, and get maybe not knowing that's what we're going to be talking about. There may be folks that we know who have good insights on that topic, and we can try to drag those people into the discussion as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'll see you all next week. Have a good one. All right. Bye.